house. I have some questions for you. Let's start with, you are a best-selling author, you are a motivational speaker speaking at all these companies around the world, and you're relatively young. So how the hell did you start this? How did you build this? Let's get the origin story.
Um, well, the first thing that just came to mind when you said, how the hell did you start this? I think the thing that has been my biggest, I would say, superpower is trying things in life and following my enthusiasm. And I think not a lot of people give enough power to trying, like leading life through curiosity. And I feel like the only reason I've found what I do today is because I found a lot of things I didn't like before that. It wasn't just, oh, I'm good at writing or I'm good at speaking. And now let's make a business out of that thing. It was just the draw to expressing myself in the world. I always felt this need to use my voice, to express who I am, to put my authenticity out there. And it has been a decade long journey figuring out what that even looks like for me. It started in 2013. I got really into photography. Was my very first creative love. And I had a camera as a kid, even younger than that, but never like did it professionally until I was in college. And then I started shooting a lot with friends, going on camping trips, and just found this like love for sharing my view of the outdoors and being able to tell a story through a photo. And ever since then, I knew I wanted to work for myself. I knew I wanted to have my own business and do my own thing in the world. And so I started to try to get the clients through photography, editing photos, working with brands. It was in the early days of like the golden age of Instagram, of brand partnerships and things like that. So doing brand partnerships with outdoor brands. And then as I started to work more on photography for money, I started to hate doing the thing I once loved. And it made me take a long, hard look at that craft and that like creative love. And was it really a thing that I wanted to do to make money, or was it just not meant to be that? And it took a while for me to be mature with that decision, I think, and to realize that it's okay that a creative passion doesn't need to make you money in life. I think it's really easy to have this outside pressure that everything we do and create in the world needs to be monetized. And I think one of the most important lessons I've learned in my business journey is there is such thing as the currency of joy, and it's not all about the currency of cash. And I learned that lesson through the photography. Was I didn't need to make money just because I was good at it. I could be good at it just to be good at it for myself. And so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this for money anymore. I don't want to do it for money. I want to do it for fun. I want to, I've film cameras on my desk right here. I have cameras all around me at all times. Like I just love the art of photography and I want to keep it just as that. And after I, finished with the photography stuff, it was right about, not finished, but decided I wasn't going to do it for money. It was right as I was graduating college, and I just spent 4 years getting a degree in finance and decided that finance wasn't the thing for me anymore. I picked the finance degree because I wanted a sexy paycheck once I graduated. And right before graduation, I was like, this doesn't really resonate with what I see for my future. And I'm the youngest of four, and my three siblings had all done some sort of travel after school. And I was like, maybe it's time for me to just figure out really who I am. Like, who is Jordan Tarver? What do I want for my life and what I want to create in the world? And so I'd saved up some money in college and I decided to buy a ticket to Europe and go on a solo backpacking trip. And on that trip to Europe, well, before leaving, I was really thinking about, I didn't want this just to be any trip. I didn't want to just go there to go to the bars and go to museums and do that kind of thing. I wanted to have a level of intention to where I came back a different version of myself. I left as one person, I came back the next. And so I decided I want to take a journal and document that trip. But I was like, I don't want to get any journal. I want to get something that's a little bit more intentional. And so I bought a leather bound journal off of Etsy. And once I got the journal, I was like, I think I can make this even more meaningful. And so I decided to make it a project that was called To Whom It May Concern. And I made a patch on the front of the journal that said that same thing, To Whom It May Concern. It had it sewn on by a shoe repair guy in Costa Mesa, California. And the reason I titled it that was when I was traveling through Europe, if I had, left my journal at a pub, or it fell out of my backpack on a train, or it was left on the bed at a hostel, whoever picked that up, they would feel like it was written for them. And I always had this underlying drive that what I created through this journal could be for other people. And as I took that journal on the trip to Europe, I started to really connect with writing, which was out of character for me because up until that time, I was not a writer by any means. I was not good at writing. It wasn't something I ever saw for myself. But I started to really fall in love with it. I mean, I still remember writing the journal entry about falling in love with writing for the first time. I was sitting in a hostel in Prague, and I just remember it was like, yeah, I could see myself doing this for a very long time. And once I came back from that trip, I had no job. I was houseless and I was single at the time. And my buddies had an extra couch, so I slept on their couch for 2 months as I looked for this next kind of job that would give me some money. And during those 2 months, I was like, I really need to fill my time intentionally. I can't just be sitting here all day long. I was surfing in the morning down at Huntington Beach and in Newport, and I would come back and my friends would be at work for another 6 hours. Like, I got to do something. I can't just sit here. And so I was like, well, I have that journal that I brought to Europe with a lot of journal entries. There's something there I can create with it. So I copied that journal over to a Google Doc, and I decided to make a book out of it. But instead of just writing the journal entries from the trip, I decided to put present day reflections on that was reflecting on what was happening as I was traveling to really extract the lessons that I was experiencing. And I published that first book in 2018, I believe. And I just really fell in love with putting my work out publicly in a way that was meant to impact other people and not just writing for myself. In writing for myself, I ended up writing for other people, and I found a lot of fulfillment through that. And in doing that book, I just released that one, like kind of small scale, inner circle, friends, family, something for my kids to read one day. I'm a very sentimental guy, so that was very important to me. And I just fell in love with like writing a book in a way that would impact other people. And even though I did that one on a small scale, I just started to think about, I really want to do something that's like a true self-help book, like a real self-help book. Not that that one isn't real, but one that was meant to, I would put more marketing behind it and like really frame it in a different way. And so that's when I got the idea for my book, You Deserve This Shit. And this book is a toolkit of everything I learned on my self-discovery journey when I went to Europe. And it's a simple step-by-step process for people to get unstuck, find their path, really lock into their own inner confidence and inner voice, and start to live a life that's really authentically them. And I wrote that book and I put it out in June of 2021. And for the first, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, it was dead quiet. It was like 5 copies a month, 10 copies a month, 7 copies. And I was like, geez, this is hard. This is a hard thing. And I decided to start marketing my book on TikTok in around September of 2021. And I remember waking up at my parents' house, December 26, 2021, 2021. And I had sold 100 copies overnight. And I was losing my mind. I was like, I've never seen this many copies sold. This is wild. But I was like, you know what? Like, flash in a pan, like, who am I to experience any of this success? And then sure enough, end of January, 1,000 copies sold. And I was like, holy shit, it's still going. But then I was like, you know what? Like, flash in a pan, this isn't going to last. And then I posted a video on right at the beginning of February of 2022. It went viral with 3.5 million views on it with my book in it. And I started doing the math in my head, and I was like, this is going to be big. And I sold 1,800 copies in 3 days and 5,000 copies in the month of February. And from there on, the book had compounded and is now sold over 30,000 copies. It's in multiple countries. It's being translated into 2 languages. But the most powerful thing for my career that came from it was an email that I got in April of 2022. And a guy reached out asking if I wanted to come speak at their chapter in Idaho. And I never explored speaking before, but I always knew from a very young age that I wanted to, some point in my life, give a commencement speech. That just has always been a dream of mine. But I never knew how to get from the stands to the podium, let's say. But here was the opportunity the universe put on a platter for me and said, hey, here you go. Do you want it or not? And if not, we're going to pass it on to the next person. And so I, being the person I am, just dove in the deep end and learned everything I possibly could about the speaking business, how to write the best keynote. I spent 7 months just working on nailing that first event in February of 2023. And that was what got me into speaking and what I'm doing today. And I think looping back around to the trying things and leading with curiosity Had I never taken that journal to Europe, I would never be talking to you right now. I would never be doing what I do in speaking. And I think that just goes to show the power of curiosity and the power of trying things, even if you don't know what they're going to turn into. I couldn't have forecasted that a journal in my backpack in Europe was going to lead to a speaking career. There's no way in hell I could have even guessed that. But connecting the dots backwards just proves to me and inspires me to continue to be curious in my own life. And I think that's been really the biggest unlock for my career.
Yeah. Well, there's so much I want to unpack there. There's so much inspiring things that I know my audience wants to do, whether it's writing a book or becoming speakers or leaders themselves as well. But let's like go through the book a little bit. You know, you write this as a kind of like that self-help personal development journey, and there's a few principles that I just loved in the book. One of them is kind of giving yourself permission to be a beginner, because I can see so many times with the women I work with that there is that strong desire, that strong passion, but sometimes the action can be a little bit lacking because of like so much over analysis, perfectionism, you know, all of the self and
Speaking my
doubt that comes
language.
up, imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff. So like, how were you able to, you know, use that concept of permission to be a beginner, but also, you know, how do you deal with failure when something you try doesn't work? You know, when you're like saying, be curious, try different things, like how do you handle it when stuff isn't landing the way you wanted it to land?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because the truth is fear of all that stuff, fear of being the beginner, fear of failure, fear of getting into the spotlight, that never goes away. That's just part of the path. I don't care if you're talking about somebody who's just at the beginning of the journey or someone as big as like The Rock or anyone that's like Harry Styles. Those people still feel fear, but they've just learned how to process it and learned how to overcome it and see it just as part of the process. And the whole thing about giving yourself permission to be the beginner for me is what helps me be more curious, because it gives me permission to say, I don't know the answer yet. Keyword is yet. You don't know it yet. You don't know what to do yet. And I think that's a very powerful place to be, because it gives you the opportunity to explore with an open mind and not feeling like you're falling behind or doing things wrong. And it allows you to find new things that maybe you weren't quite sure would be things that you wanted to do. For example, like writing a book or me even starting a journal. Had I not been able to be the beginner, I probably wouldn't have done the journal because I thought it was going to be bad, or like I was going to be a bad writer, or it was going to have grammatical errors and this and that. But because I had that open mindedness, it kind of broke down the wall of what all those things that maybe would hold me back. And I think also being the beginner is one of the most powerful places to come from, because it means you have only like, what's the best way to explain it? You only can go forward when you're a beginner. There's no backwards. It's like the quote, started from the bottom, now we're here. It's like, that's the bottom. And so you only can go up. And I think when people can have that perspective of being the beginner, recognizing that everything they do from the mindset of a beginner is moving them forward towards something. And there's just so much opportunity and so much possibility when you're a beginner. To me, that's just like, that's where the magic is. It's like, I want to be a beginner. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be surrounded by people that are ahead of me and that make me feel like I have things to learn, because it pushes me to learn, and it opens me up to bigger things for myself. So that's what I would say about being the beginner and what it can really do for your life. And when it comes to failure, the cliche is no such thing as a failure. All failures are lessons. And it's so true, because you learn something in everything you do. And I think that's a mindset I try to have a lot in life is what's the positive in the situation? And maybe it's not even talking about failures, but just in general, like what can I take from this that's going to empower me to move forward in a better way? And that has been a big thing for me, because in all these things I've tried, photography, writing, YouTube videos, all speaking, even if I find something I don't like, and I feel like, oh, I could look at it and be like, oh, that's such a failure. I shouldn't have done that. I wasted my time. But I really believe understanding what you don't like to do is almost more valuable than understanding what you do like to do. because for the rest of your life, you can say no to that thing with certainty and confidence. And that pushes you toward the things that you do like. And so when we're searching for the things we want to do in our life, whether it's to write a book, to be a speaker, to be a podcaster, to live alcohol free, when you find something you don't like, it pushes you toward the more aligned thing that is meant for you. And so that's how I look at things when I'm trying things and I find something I don't like. I try to see it as a nudge toward the thing that I really do like.
Yeah. What about when you're in a situation where like you want that, it's just not happening, I guess maybe as fast as you wanted it to happen, or you're getting jaded on it.
I'm laughing because I'm going through that right now. Um, I've been building my speaking career for what's it, August, about a little over a year and a half. And when I started, I was like, it's going to be fast, hockey stick momentum, up and to the right, all the things that you would want. And then reality hits. And you remember that greatness takes time, and doing good work doesn't happen overnight. And there's a level of surrender, acceptance, and patience required on any journey in life, whether it's building a business or just like trying to become a better human. And we can want things to happen faster, but I am in full belief that there is another timeline at play that we're not in control of. And it's really easy to think that our timeline or our desired expectations are the ones that have to be true, or else we're going to feel like we're not on track or we're falling behind. But there are larger forces at play at all times. And I've experienced that a lot in this last year and a half. It's been a really challenging journey to have that acceptance and patience and surrender. But the more I let go, the more it unfolds in the way that it's supposed to. And when I let go of the plan that I think it was meant to be the plan, I give space for the actual plan to happen through the forces of the universe. And through that, I feel like I align with more of what's meant for me. But it's so easy to think your plan is better than the universe's plan because we're a human mind that thinks we're in control. But it just hasn't worked that way. And this is all coming from, personal experience. I've just been in the weeds with that exact question for the last year and a half, and trying to even wrap my own head around that. Like, how do I get through this really difficult period where I want it to work and I want this many gigs, or I want it to look this way, and it looks like none of that. It's like, how do I accept that and open myself up to that? And it's not easy. I will say it's not easy at all. And it does take a level of intention and a level of faith and trust in the direction that you're being pulled. But I truly believe if we allow for the space of the universe to do its thing and work its magic, we'll be looking back a year from now being very thankful that we let go of our plan and just trusted the way things are going to unfold.
Yeah. I think it's almost like a paradoxical thing sometimes, because it's like you want to, step up to the plate and like take action on all of their dreams and all of the, steps that are required. But at the same time, it's like it's the mindset of like, but how can you like lose the control, and that like grip on things happening exactly the way you planned it and the exact way you thought about it? Because like you're right, maybe the universe is meant to delight you with how much better it's supposed to be. And some
Yeah.
things do take time and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really great way to kind of look at it. And I look back too in my journey and be like, I started writing a book in 2018 and it got published in 2022. And when I first wrote it, I was like, oh, this will be out in like a year and it's going to help so many people. And I'm like, thank God that book didn't come out because
Right.
like
There you
it
go.
would have been such a bad version of it. And I just wasn't ready for that level of visibility yet and so many things. So I can see that. And going back to the, what you said about being a beginner, I think it's in your book, and I don't want to misquote you, but something along the lines of like the high you feel on continual improvement, like how good that feels when
Yeah.
like really, like you said, you start at the bottom and no matter what, you're going up. And whether you're a beginner or you're a more seasoned person listening to this, I think sometimes even the more seasoned person needs to remember that energy. And it's like, there's that saying by Tony Robbins where someone's like, I tried everything and nothing works. And Tony's like, yeah, how many things have you tried? And they're like, well, these 5 things. And he's like, you've tried everything?
Yeah.
It's like we need to get back into that seat of like, let's get curious, let's experiment, let's try new things, let's come at it with a different energy instead of just getting jaded into like, well, it feels like I've tried everything, but I really haven't, right? So I love that. We both worked in the mortgage industry. I was there for about a year and definitely not aligned. I was one of the worst jobs I've ever had personally. And thank God, though, I met my husband there. So I can see why the universe planted me in a job like that.
There you
I
go.
also then worked in a university setting for another 10 years before I kind of launched my own business. I'm curious though, you say specifically in your book that that definitely wasn't, your passion. The finance degree was something that you thought would look good on paper, but wasn't really obviously aligned with your heart. How important do you think it is for people to really be working on what they're passionate about? And if they're kind of in that place where they don't know what that is, or they're not even sure how to make that happen. Like you said, we have passions, like maybe I like photography, but I'm in that mindset of like, yeah, but do I really want to like make a career out of this? So it's like, how can someone move from that passionless job into like really being able to share their gifts and doing something that they're passionate about? What would be some of the first steps you'd suggest?
I think the first thing is really identifying what you're interested in life. And a lot of times to know what you're interested in, you have to try a bunch of things. I didn't know I was interested in writing just right off the bat. That was just one of the things I tried of many different things. And so it's getting clear on what you actually like to do. What are you willing to spend your time doing that will make you feel fulfilled? And I think passion's an interesting concept. And my understanding of it and perspective of it has developed quite a bit over the years. And I found that passion is less about being like, hey, I'm really passionate about this thing. I'm going to go do it. And more like, hey, I did a lot of this thing and now I'm really passionate about it because I'm so connected to what it is. I
Mhm.
wasn't passionate about writing to start. I became passionate about writing by writing a lot. And I've realized through trying and doing and doing the work and putting the reps that I loved it. It was the curiosity, it was the idea of like, what's over there with writing? I'm going to try it. I'm starting to really like this. I'm doing it more. I feel really passionate about this thing. I don't want to let go of it. And so it's less about knowing what your passion is before starting and trying a bunch of things to find the thing that makes you feel passion through it. And I think that's a new frame I've been trying to look at passion through. It is something that's actually created by doing, not something you know beforehand. And so the way you find your passion is to try multiple things and a lot of things. I'm not saying all at once, but just be curious, be the beginner, go into things with an open mind. And if you don't like it, that's again a good thing, a thumbs up for your whole life. Um, and I think moving from a passionless job to something you feel passion in, it's going to take a level of work to get there. I'm still in transition from I'm still a little bit in the corporate world right now, and making a big transition into this stuff more full time. But it's all about the continuous work you do on the side. I've always been a big believer, whether you're doing it for money or not, to have a creative outlet outside of your job if you're in the corporate world. Um, Even if you're not in the corporate world, I think having a creative outlet in life in general is very, very crucial because I believe creativity is one of the most important things for humanity. It doesn't just change the world, it doesn't just create our future, but it actually changes your life because when you dig for your creative ideas, when you understand how you want to express yourself in the world, you start to understand more about your truth and more about your authenticity, and you start to really understand who you truly are because you're exploring what makes you you, and that's your expression, your ideas, your voice, all those things, and all that stuff comes through having that side thing outside of work. And that's how all this started for me. Photography was a side thing. I didn't start photography thinking I'm going to work with brands. I started because I was going on trips with my friends and they had cameras and I couldn't even afford my first camera. My friend would let me borrow his for the first like 6 months of being a photographer. I didn't have my own camera. I just used the people around me because I loved it. And then I started to post more and got really into it and then started to see like there was a way to make money. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try that. But I think it just comes back to trying things and understanding that the passion is going to be created by doing a lot of the work, not the other
Yeah.
way around.
It's funny, in my book, we have an 8-week plan to go through. And towards the end of the weeks, I have this create week where, you're just going out and exploring the world again. And you're trying all the things you've always wanted to try, whether it's like tango lessons or going to a Zumba class or going to the symphony and stuff. And I feel like that's what I kind of did on my journey. And through that, like real deep exploration, trying new things, trying things I've always wanted to try, do things I wanted, like loved when I was a kid, that's what brought me also to this
Hmm.
company and this business and my writing and all that kind of stuff. Like, sharing these messages and the advice, like all of that. I went to writers' workshops, for example. Like, I didn't know, like, I mean, I think I always wanted to be a writer, but like, I never knew what all of that kind of creativity and just like putting myself not just out there as a beginner, but meeting new people and trying different things, like that it would actually lead to here. And then I could close the door on some of the stuff that I'm like, yeah, I'm good on that one time I tried that thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm really know what I'm passionate about now. So really interesting enough, I believe that when it comes to making alcohol a smaller part of your life, we have this really old adage that like only people with severe problems, whatever, stop drinking alcohol. And then it becomes this like normal versus unnormal type of like conversation. And I think what's really cool about the new alcohol-free movement is it gives permission for anyone to reevaluate the relationship with alcohol. And I have this theory that it's like the greatest movers and shakers on the planet get this nudge from the universe to be like, hey, we have a really big purpose to live out on this planet. We don't have time for this beverage. And so I love to like showcase whether it's, like Tony Robbins doesn't drink, Brene Brown's doesn't drink, just all these incredible leaders. It's always such a validation to get someone who's reevaluated alcohol on the show and is able to tie that to their success and to their growth. So you've recently gone alcohol free in this last year. Tell me
Yeah.
about that journey.
224 days as of today.
Woohoo!
I looked at my counter before this. Um, and I, let's see where I want to start with this. Like I told you before we got on the show, this is my first time ever publicly really talking about this. So I'm interested to see even where my own ideas go with this. So bear with me as I explore my own reflection a little bit here. I will say I was in a fraternity in college, and I want to say that because I want to show the atmosphere I used to be in with alcohol and how I've able to grow out of that and how far I've been able to grow out of the atmosphere and not let it become my full identity. And when it was my identity and still I was able to still find a way out and re-identify who I am in this new version of myself in this new chapter. And I think that's a really important thing for people to remember. And what I try to remember a lot is we're constantly writing new chapters in our life, and there's a constant nudge to understand who we are on the current day and really be that version of ourselves. And today, that's who I am. I'm someone who's not interested in drinking alcohol right now. That may change in my future. Who knows? Like, I don't want to say, life. There's so many things that happen in life. I will never say never. But when I think about that journey, I always wasn't like super about drinking all the time. I feel like I was just in the bubble of that during college and a little bit after. And I was always just not loving the way that I felt. And especially being a creative person, I always felt like it was harder like on my mind and ideas, and it took me a little bit longer to get back into the flow of things and stay motivated and have my momentum like stay around. And then I kind of like started to think about like not doing it here and there about a year, like last year. And my wife had already been stopping her drinking or just having cocktails. We aren't big drinkers anymore anyway, before we became alcohol free. A cocktail here and there at dinner, a celebratory glass of wine, those kind of things. But it still adds up. And her birthday's on New Year's Eve. And we got married last September, went on our honeymoon, all the drinks in the world, celebrating marriage, and then came back. And her birthday was New Year's Eve. Of course, we had birthday cocktails. And then after her birthday, start of the year. So the obvious thing is to try to like live a better life at the beginning of the year. And so we kind of just played with the idea of like, what if we just like didn't drink for the month of January? And January went by. I didn't even like think of it at all. And it was so nice because it was one decision removed from my life, which seems small, but it doesn't seem small when you're someone who struggles with peer pressure. If you know your answer is no, you don't have to decide what you're going to do in a situation when someone says, hey, do you want to drink? No. It's much easier that way for someone who's like, oh, like my friend, like my best friend just asked if I could drink. Like, I don't want to let him down, but it's so much easier for me to be like, yeah, I don't drink. There's no explanation needed, period, done, full stop. And so January was super easy. We did it. And it's really nice having accountability partner, whether it's a partner in your house, like a spouse or a significant other, or if it's just a friend on a similar journey. If you don't live with someone, I think having that accountability partner, especially if you're two people that go to the same events together, because then you're in it together. You can be with someone who, is going to be sober if you're still around people that are drinking. And that was really helpful. Like when we went to weddings, because I would say the first real test of can you say no to a drink is when you go to a wedding with 40 of your college friends that all still drink and you're able to be like, no, I'm good. And once I did that, I was like, wow, that was a big vote toward my self-confidence in that moment, and a big vote toward standing up for what I really wanted and saying no. And the next test was going to a bachelor party. Now I'm without my wife and I'm with 10 of my best friends from college and fraternity days who still drink, and that's totally fine. It doesn't bother me to be around people. It's not like offensive to me. I'm happy to be there. I just don't feel like my true self when I drink anymore. And so that was my big test, was like, could I make it through this bachelor party without a drink with 10 of my best friends who are like brothers to me, the people that I usually would give in on the peer pressure to? And I did it. 4 days, all of them drank. I didn't have a single drink. And I still remember when I told my best friend that I wasn't going to drink, he was kind of bummed. He's like, oh, like Jordan's going to like go to bed early. He's not going to be like super involved. And then after the weekend, he's like, dude, I was like really impressed, honestly, with the fact that it didn't change how you acted around us. It didn't change your involvement in the party. Didn't change anything. You actually were one of the ones who was more involved than the other people that were drinking. And I was like, well, that's the thing. Like when I don't drink, I can show up as the version of myself I want to show up as in that moment. And it doesn't make me someone who's not going to be involved. It probably makes me more involved because I'm more comfortable in the social setting. And so that was like a huge, another vote toward my self-confidence. Made it through wedding, made it through bachelor party. I can honestly do anything at this point with alcohol. And so now, it's been up until today, which is August 12th, 220, I think 4 days. And it's been really nice. It's been really good for my business, really good for my creative ideas, especially I'm writing another book right now. And I feel like if I had a drink on a Friday, I would still feel a little bit sluggish on a Monday. I don't feel that anymore. And I think that's what we forget. It's like, it's not, especially as you get older, it's not just the day you drink, but it's the following days also become part of that day of having a drink, especially for me. So that's been really a big unlock for me, is the energy it's given back to me to pour into the things that I love.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it really is that ability to be so perceptible and so intuitive to be like, I mean, let's be honest, there's nobody on this planet that wakes up the next day and feels great the next day after drinking, right? Unless you're like 18 or something. But, once get older, it just doesn't work like that. That's just science. And so it really has to be those very perceptive, intuitive people that are like, wait a minute, I don't like this. I don't like how I'm not as creative the next day, or I feel a little like sluggish or whatnot. And why am I inviting this, kind of it's just a societal thing that we've all accepted. And so it really has to be the bravest ones that are like, but wait a minute, like, do I really want to be doing this? Do I really want to be feeling like this?
Yeah.
And I think what's really cool about your story too is that even at the bachelor party, like you probably blew minds. Like, wait a minute, Jordan's here, not drinking. He's still the life of the party. He's having fun. He's waking up early, feeling good. I didn't know you could live like that. You know what I mean? So it's like inspiring and
Yeah.
influencing people without us even knowing it. And I love
Love
what you
that.
say about the confidence too, because in my world, so many people, it's like I trick people to take a break from alcohol. And then basically they like come alive to their confidence and their deeper dreams, and then they're unstoppable. And like to me, it's like not actually about the alcohol. It's like the journey and the vehicle to get someone to be completely unstoppable and just so on fire for what they really want out of their life.
I
Because,
love that.
when you get all that confidence from doing something that scares you, or you get out of your, comfort zone, or you have to show up with courage at these social events and stuff like that, or you just do something you never thought you could do, all of that overspills into the other
Yeah.
areas of your life where I didn't think I could be an entrepreneur. I didn't think I could be an author. I didn't think I could be a speaker on stage. And so it's like that little secret thing to do. And I just love how you were able to be able to capture some of those gifts that aren't necessarily like logistically, like we don't think they're as tied. We think maybe we'll feel healthier, we'll sleep better. Yeah, of course. But then this other kind of intrinsic gifts that we get from going alcohol free that have just compounding effects in your career, in your relationships, in your confidence, and your self-esteem. So obviously I'm obsessed with.
Yes.
Um, Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna do this project, I think, where I know a lot of really high level kind of personal development leaders don't drink, but I want to find like more influencers, more leaders, more authors, and just kind of compile a list of people who either like don't drink or don't prioritize alcohol in their lives. And so for anyone who's really questioning it, when they see this list and they're like, "Holy shit, I didn't know."
Yeah.
A lot of people, for example, just don't talk about it very much, but like I didn't know that, Amanda Francis and Catherine Zinkina and all these like cool people like also on the mocktail, party train. And it just adds to the movement and just adds to like the voice of like collectively, I think we're all questioning these habits that have been kind of passed down from generation to generation of like, but wait a minute, is that really like serving
Yeah.
us and our dreams and our values and our lifestyle?
Well, I think another thing, and you said it too, you touched on the intuition. Um, Everyone's intuitive. Like everyone who's listening to this right now is, whether you believe it or not, like you are absolutely intuitive and you absolutely have an inner compass. And a lot of the times, if you are thinking you're not intuitive, ask yourself, what do I feel right now? And that's often a hit of intuition or something that's directing you like a compass. And for me, I just knew I wasn't feeling good anymore. And so instead of ignoring that I wasn't feeling good, I started to ask questions of, what am I doing in my life that's making me not feeling good or doesn't make me feel good? And it was very obvious. There's really only one thing that I could think of, which was alcohol. It wasn't going to the gym. It wasn't eating a clean diet. It wasn't taking care of my mental health. Like those things all made me feel really good. But there was that one outlier that really, I would say it took from my reservoir of energy in my life force. And I think like what you said earlier about um, where they're on fire, people get on fire when they stop drinking and kind of lock into their confidence. Like the reason I'm proud to say 224 days is because that's 224 days of momentum I've sustained in my life and decided that I don't want to give it up. And I don't know when I will decide to have a cocktail in my life. Maybe we'll go on vacation one day and I'll want one, whatever. But I know it's going to be a hard decision because now when I think about it, it's the question of, do I want to give up the way that I feel? And I think that's one of the most important things to hold on to is feeling good in
Yeah.
life. If we can feel good in life and we can sustain feeling good in life, we can overcome anything. We can create anything. We can build anything. We can do anything. We can become whoever we want to become when we feel good. And so if that's the thing that makes me not feel good, like that's always going to be a factor in the decision is, do I want to give up this momentum? Do I want to give up this creative flow? Do I want to give up this joy and like radiating aura that I have because of this thing? And like usually the answer is going to be no.
I have this one post that's pretty popular about how alcohol blocks our manifestations, just with the simple idea that like we manifest how we feel. It's our state, it's our energy. And if like this
Mm,
this drink that literally scientifically lowers all of that,
yeah.
not just from a spiritual sense, but literally scientifically, all of our happiness neurotransmitters go down, our stress hormones goes up, like our body goes haywire with it. Like it just makes so much sense to that. And I think it's a good why. And I think everyone needs a really good why, like to continue on. And for me, it's like I saw myself playing small and not going for my dreams with alcohol in the picture. And then all of a sudden, like a rocket ship. And so even if it wouldn't be a big deal for me personally, maybe to have a drink like on a New Year's Eve, it's like, why would I want to do the thing that symbolizes playing small when here I am on this like rocket ship? So that's kind of my deeper why. But for anyone in the audience who's kind of questioning theirs, it's always a good kind of exercise to think of like, why keep going? Why keep sustaining myself, and kind of having that reflection.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question for you. You're a huge reader. Part of the reason why your book is so viral too is that you read a lot of books and you recommend books and, you recommend your book. Obviously, we're going to drop that in the show notes. Okay, this is a hard one because I think like the best book ever is going to be you know, something that can change over time, but like, what are some of the best books you read maybe just this year that you think have really kind of affected your mindset or perspective?
Um, let me spin around real quick and look at my bookshelf. Two books that come to mind. One is for the writers in the room, the authors. I have it on my desk right here. The second is a book that is more personal development driven, but the first one is called Write Useful Books. I don't know if you've read this before. It's a very methodical approach on how to write a recommendable nonfiction book. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do, but it's a thing that creates the atomic habits in the world, the subtle arts. It's when you write a book so good that one person tells five, and those five tell another five each, and it goes on and on and on to sell 15 million like Atomic Habits or more by now. So Write Useful Books by Rob Fitzpatrick just really impacted me in my writing process as I start to write this new book. And for those who don't know, I'm documenting writing my new book on YouTube. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can kind of see what I'm doing there and how I'm kind of putting this book into process in real time. So that was a really cool one for like my business side of things. And then Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen, who's a good friend of mine. He wrote about kind of how to overcome the negative thoughts that are creating your suffering. And I'm sure many people have heard about this book. It has been taking over TikTok for the last 2 or so years. But it's a very simple read with rooted in a lot of great spiritual practices, which resonate deeply with me. And even as someone who does have a positive mind, it's always nice to read someone else's perspective or their approach to things, because life is always going to throw us challenges. It's always going to throw us problems. And if I can have a better toolkit to overcome those things, because I know those things are going to be inevitable for the rest of my life, if I can create a better toolkit to overcome those things, I think I just set myself up for way better success. So I even as someone who feels very strong-minded and has great mental toughness and a positive outlook on life, I think it's always good to prime and understand other ways to even better that. So I would say that write useful books if you want to write a useful book, and then Don't Believe Everything You Think if you want to overcome the negative thoughts holding you back.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to include those in the show notes. Your book, You Deserve This Shit, will always also be there. So go get that book as well. Where else can people connect with you or learn more from you?
Yeah, Jordan Tarver on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I would say YouTube is like my newest thing that I'm working on. I've been doing it for about 5 weeks now. I'm documenting the entire process of writing my next book from start to finish. So it's a real-time vlog, going week by week of what I'm working on and showing a little bit about the things I do that empower me to be an author and to write things like this and have creative ideas. So that's one of my newest and most exciting projects. So if you want to check that out, it's on YouTube. Just search Jordan Tarver and you'll see it there. But yeah, Jordan Tarver basically everywhere, jordantarver.com. And if you go on Amazon, search my name, you can find my book, You Deserve This Shit.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I loved all your advice.
Thank you so much. Appreciate having me.